this is Sang Wiem, and today we're going to be talking a little more about friction and gravity. Friction is a force exerted when two surfaces rub against each other, and it acts in a direction opposite to the direction of the object's motion. So in this case, because the direction of the object's motion is towards the right, since the person is pushing it towards the right, friction will act towards the left. There are two factors involved in friction. There are the types of surfaces involved and how hard the surfaces are pushed together. The smoother surfaces there are, the less friction there is. So on an ice rink, because the metal of the ice skate and the ice are both smoother than a normal road and your shoe, there will be less friction than you experience on a daily basis, and it'll be easier to slide on the ice. And for how hard the surfaces are pushed together, the harder push there is, the more friction there is. So when you're riding a bike and you make a sharp turn, you momentarily increase the pressure on that bike and you give it a harder push. So that increases the friction between the bike and the ground, and it prevents you from falling over. There are four types of friction. There's rolling friction, sliding friction, static friction, and fluid friction. Rolling friction is when an object rolls across a surface, like when you ride a bike. So it's much easier to roll the bike and actually ride it rather than to just push it. So rolling friction is usually much easier to overcome than sliding friction. And sliding friction is when two solid surfaces slide across each other. Sliding friction makes moving objects slow down and stop. So if there wasn't sliding friction, this person who's sliding down the hill would go on forever and ever and ever. They wouldn't stop. But because there's sliding friction, they're going to stop eventually. Now, static friction is when objects are resting on a surface. So right now you're experiencing static friction if you're sitting or standing somewhere. And static friction also makes it harder to move resting objects. If you don't push hard, so in this picture, there is static friction on the couch right now. If you don't push the couch hard enough, then the couch won't move. The force that's keeping the couch from moving is static friction. But if you get some friends to help you, then you can push it and the couch will start moving. At that point, there's no more static friction and there's sliding friction. Now, finally, there's fluid friction. Fluid friction is when a solid object moves through a fluid, in this case, water or air. Fluid friction acts on swimmers and aerial acrobats, or when a skateboarder is doing a trick in midair. So fluid friction from contact with water acts on your body when you swim. When an object moves through the air, the fluid friction acting on the object is referred to as air resistance. Fluid friction is also typically easier to overcome than sliding friction. Okay, now let's move on to gravity. Gravity is a force that pulls objects towards each other. So right now we're all experiencing gravity because we're being pulled towards the Earth. There's the law of universal gravitation. This law was discovered by Newton. He concluded that Earth's gravity also attracts the moon, and therefore the sun's gravity keeps the planets in their orbits. Basically, what this law says is that the force of gravity acts between all objects in the universe that have mass. So any two objects in the universe that have mass attract each other. You are attracted not only to Earth, but also to your desk, the other planets in the solar system, and the star. And if there's a smaller object, then that smaller object is attracted to you. However, you don't see this attraction between objects on Earth because these forces are extremely small compared to the attraction between the objects and Earth itself. So because the force of the gravity pulling down an apple or an object is so strong, your force won't really have an effect on it, and you won't be able to see a visible change. There are also two factors that affect gravity. There's the mass of each object and the distance between the objects. The more mass there is, the greater gravitational force it has. The sun has the greatest mass and therefore the strongest gravity in the solar system. Earth and the other planets therefore orbit around the sun. Gravitational force also depends on the distance between the object's centers. As distance increases, gravitational force decreases. If you drop your phone, then you see your cell phone fall to Earth because Earth and your cell phone are close together and Earth exerts a greater gravitational pull. Because you have a lot less mass than the Earth, the phone won't float back to you, it'll be pulled towards the Earth. But if you were as big as the sun and the phone was outside of Earth's atmosphere, then the phone will be pulled towards the sun instead of the Earth. Now let's talk about weight versus mass. So weight is a measure of the force of gravity on an object. Since weight is a measure of force, the SI unit of weight is a Newton, also written as a capital N. If you know the object of an object in kilograms, you can calculate its weight on Earth using Newton's second law. We'll review that a little bit on the next slide. Mass is a measure of the amount of matter in an object, which is normally measured in science in kilograms. So when you go to the doctor's office and you get weighed, they say your weight is blah blah blah, but in reality it's your mass that is whatever, because if you were to go to Jupiter, then your weight would change drastically. So like I said, you can find the weight of the object using its mass through Newton's second law. Newton's second law is F is equal to ma. So the net force is equal to mass times acceleration. On Earth, the acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. And on Earth, 1 pound is also equal to 4.45 newtons. You only need this if you're going to use newtons. If you're going to use kilograms, then you don't need the second conversion. So on Earth, 50 kilograms would weigh 490 newtons. But on Jupiter, because the acceleration due to gravity is 24.5, which is a lot higher than 9.8, it'll be 1,225 newtons. This is because the gravitational force exerted on you is greater on Jupiter than on Earth. So today we talked about friction, the types of friction, the factors that affect friction and gravity, and the difference between weight and mass. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and from now on we're going to start doing Python videos, so keep a lookout for those, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye!